We spend so much of our time predicting where the Submariner, where the GMT and the Daytona will go, but the one watch in this category that doesn't get our attention, that deserves a lot more appreciation, and one that seems to be getting that recognition is the Yacht-Master. Now, with a name like Yacht-Master, we would think it's one that belongs to a brand like Omega, since they own the Speedmaster, Seamaster, Railmaster names. Yacht-Master falls into that profile nicely, but it in fact belongs to Rolex. And where the Submariner, GMT, a lot of these watches are more utilitarian focused, the Yacht-Master aims to try and do both. Be something that has an elegance to it, a more elegant quality, but also has all the functional focus at the same time. And it's in this middle ground where it blurs, and people find it to be quite a peculiar model in the category. In fact, as far as a professional watch goes, it's probably one of the most underrated, underappreciated for what it is, because it is constantly being overshadowed by the GMT and the Submariner, that are legends in their own right. The Yacht-Master is a peculiar case that has found itself in the back of the Rolex catalogue. Throughout its existence, it's a professional model that has been experimented on with contrasting metals, materials, colours, and it's never been one that's been on the mind of the enthusiast too much. But this news is going to change that. Spotted on the wrist of helmsman Ben Ainsley, the Yacht-Master Titanium. This video is going to unpack what we know so far, what we can see from the images. I'll be providing renders for us to look at, and we can talk through the process of just why this watch has been given this material, what it means for the watch, and things like, why was the Yacht-Master chosen? Is this the first time that Rolex has ever used titanium with any of their pieces? And ultimately, what is it going to do for a watch like this? Is this now a time where Rolex as a brand is focusing on that level of tool watch that they've always wanted to try and bring back? And this level of professionalism now assigned with the Yacht-Master name is very interesting. The great thing about this news is that there are in fact images. There is proof that this watch exists. And like with so many other releases, like for example the James Cameron Deep Sea, a watch originally worn as a prototype while the expedition was going on before it was released to the public, this is another example of a watch that's being tested in the field before being sent out to market. Question to ask, is this the first time that Rolex is using titanium as a material for their watches? In fact, they've used it as a caseback material for the Deep Sea. So they do have a bit of understanding around the material itself. The next question to ask is, why now? Why is Rolex choosing this material? It's not like they are the first to ever use it. In fact, they're probably one of the last brands to use the component. And this is the trend that Rolex always follows. They are never the first to adopt components. They are often the last, but they generally get the most amount of attention when they do in fact integrate it into their products. So titanium is a natural progression forward. I feel like they've seen the success of this material used on watches like the Tudor Pelagos. They're seeing how their competition in this category, notably Omega, are doing so well with the No Time to Die Seamaster, with the titanium Aquaterra. Before we look at the watch more, it's good to understand the material. So why titanium? And instead of spending 10 minutes trying to explain what makes it such a unique material, what I will do is break it down into its very basic roots. Compared to stainless steel, there are 3 properties that make it far better. It doesn't have all the advantages, but it does have many, especially in the professional category. The 3 most important parts that you need to know is that it is corrosion resistant, highly corrosion resistant. Next, its strength to density ratio, meaning its overall strength as a material compared to its overall weight. And then third, it's to do with its lightness, being such a light material and being one that's extremely durable. Those 3 are the most important things you need to know about titanium as a substance. There are many other things, the fact that it's quite inert and it's not something that irritates the skin. It's a natural occurring material that has many other superb qualities that makes it excellent for a wristwatch. Why isn't titanium used more with watches? Well, it's more expensive because the alloy itself requires a bit more effort, but there is also a downside to the substance, and I think this might be the primary reason why Rolex as a brand hasn't adopted it. It's because the material itself doesn't have much luster. It doesn't shine anywhere near as well as stainless steel. It doesn't polish up like a piece of jewelry. And Rolex has very much been defined as how they work with their metals. And through their foundry, through these procedures of metallurgy, how they get their watches to look so elegant. The downside is that titanium doesn't look very elegant, which is why it lines up so nicely in the tool watch category. So if we segue into looking at the renders that I've thrown together, what we know so far, it's 42 millimeters in size, very much is the same to what we have seen with the white gold release, which was an exceptionally good watch that definitely fell by the wayside. The only few differences that this watch offers is it's now on a NATO-styled strap, and it also doesn't have a date complication. The fascinating thing is that for the first time, Rolex has talked about the NATO strap that the watch will be equipped with, using material like Cordura and a high-performance elastomer, which is also combined with Velcro. So we're getting another Richard Mille-esque kind of strap combination. The Velcro on a NATO strap is something that we've seen commonly used with the Speedmaster from Omega, especially when we look to their Moonwatch. Rolex also specifies that the titanium they're using is called RLX Titanium. I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, but Rolex is one of the only manufacturers out there today that has their own foundry. They do everything in-house. So considering that, we can think that the type of titanium they'll be using is going to be something special. I would believe it's grade 5 titanium, but what makes it different is that it's a much darker shade of titanium. So you've got to question whether it's to do with the carbon composite that they've added, the percentage of carbon that's added to the formula, if it does in fact have some kind of anthracite coating on top of it, any kind of finish that makes it more scratch resistant. Through the photographs we've seen, most of us can notice that it's not a watch that's highly polished. And this works extremely well with the Yacht-Master because we look to the bezel and to the dial. This is one of the few Rolex professional models that is almost entirely matte finished when we look to those two components. Generally, we see either a matte platinum or a matte gold. With the matte black ceramic bezel, it looks great. Paired with a flat matte dial, it looks even more professional. So the entire watch is going to be matte finished. Also, without the date complication, I would imagine that they're going to be using the same movement that is in the current 41mm Submariner. Let's put all of the details aside and just think about the Yacht-Master now turning into a highly professional-oriented watch. Let's just think about the name for a second. The name like Submariner, GMT. Submariner sounds very formal. GMT sounds generic. Yacht-Master gives you this distinct feeling that it is professional-driven. Seeing the Yacht-Master name used is an excellent idea because it's not only going to make the watch appear a lot more athletic, but it's also going to rise it to a level that now competes with the Submariner and the GMT in a different category. It's far more professional than the other two. And where the two legends in this zone have an established identity, the Yacht-Master is one that actually doesn't have one. This is a way for the watch to carve a new path. And as someone who spends so much time predicting and getting 99% of the predictions wrong, this one I can believe. What I also find interesting is how we've seen this up and down development of the professional case for the Submariner and the GMTs. How they've gone from the super case to more tapered lugs to now seeing 41mm sizes, 43. The Yacht-Master hasn't seen much change. It began in the 35mm category and the 40, went to 42 when it was introduced in white gold, and now we're seeing it remain in the 42 zone with its tapered lugs, excellent proportions, now getting this material as well. In a way, we could say that the development of the Submariner and the GMT has guided the direction for the Yacht-Master. And it shows the roots of a great success story. A professional Rolex watch with a name that's never really caught on. One that was designed and purposefully built to be a more formal, driven piece, worn on yachts, on ships, a lot more jazzed up as a variant of the Submariner. We're now seeing how the name is being used in a completely different way, highlighting its level of professionalism that it's never actually had before. It's going to receive the attention not just for its presentation and new material, but that it actually represents a different side of the professional category. And what does this spell for the direction of other sports watches? I think it will always remain in the background. Use of material like this will stay with watches that aren't the poster children. But it means then that the underrated Yacht-Master will now have an entirely different USP. And it's a welcome change. I know most of us will probably roll our eyes and say, well, we've had the Pelagos and so many other examples out there already. What makes this so special? And I agree with you. Rolex has never been on the forefront when it comes to introducing these concepts. But it also might mean that the use of titanium in the industry will change. I'm going to say that we are going to see this watch released in 2022 with the option of either a rubber strap or this new NATO fabric. Odds are it's going to be one of the most expensive titanium watches we've ever seen on the market, but will also come with all the bells and whistles that we would expect. All we can do now is wait and see. Going off these photos is difficult. It's hard to know what we're going to get. If it's going to be a prototype or if there's going to be something real that comes out of it. It's too good of an option for them not to implement, I think. Especially when the Yacht-Master has never gotten the attention that it deserves. This is such a good way of bringing it across. A watch that is so often neglected by us. And when we consider how good that 42mm white gold model was with the Oyster Flex strap, I mean, this is going to be a killer. It'll be such a good piece. One thing that I find so valid about this prototype and this concept is the entire matte finish. Matte bezel, matte dial, matte case. It's just too good not to be true, you know? It's gotten to a point now where it's fully believable because it's right there in front of you. So there's no knowing. Take it from me, the person who never gets these things right, who often gets so close and then so far. Still waiting for that Tudor Marine National release. Might happen by the time I'm 50.